you for joining us on the porch. I'm State Representative Jane Garibay of the 60th District, part of Windsor and all of Windsor Locks. I'm really excited today to have three interesting guests who are going to share their experiences in the House. First is Representative Jill Berry, representing the 31st District, Glastonbury. Hi, Jillian.
Hi.
Representative Jill Berry, 18th District, sorry. Representative Jill Berry, representing the 31st District, Glastonbury, and Representative Carrie Wood, representing the 29th District, Newington, Rocky Hill, and Weathersfield. Good morning, representatives.
Morning.
Morning.
So first I wanted to talk about, we're all new legislators and elected in 2018. And can we talk a little bit about what those first 2 years have been like for you?
Thank you so much for having us today. I'll jump right in. It's been eye-opening for sure. I had done advocacy work before coming to the legislature, but once you get in there, learning how the process really works behind the scenes. And for me, I guess the most eye-opening thing are the different power structures that exist even within the building once you've gotten elected. And so figuring out what levers to pull and who you need to talk to in order to move your bills through the process has been really eye-opening. The really big treat is meeting folks like you all. So it's been nice to have such a fantastic freshman class, in particular, so many amazing women.
Right, I agree with that. Jill, what do you think?
No, I agree with what Jillian said. I would say that walking into the House chambers for that first time as a legislator is so powerful and so inspiring. And all 151 of us are fighting for something different. We're all fighting for something, and you can feel that power in the chambers. And it's really surreal. It's a great feeling. There's triumphs, there's heartaches, but it's just, you feel like you're doing something.
Right, I agree. That first day in the chambers where it really hit me, like, yeah. Oh my God, this is it, you know? So, yeah. And Carrie, what about you?
You know, just to add on to those sentiments, I have learned that I respect and will always respect any person that throws their hat in the ring to be a public servant, because I think sometimes we're all really critical of people and their policies, and that's fine. We're all different. We all are fighting for different things. But I will always respect everyone who decided to do this, because it is not easy at all. It is majorly time consuming. It is not a full-time job. It is 24/7, 365. You know, and a lot of us also have kids and husbands and part-time jobs and full-time jobs and, you know, extracurricular activities. So it is so much work to campaign and then be a legislator. So, you know, it just is, it's a tough job, but it's a rewarding job. And I respect everyone that does it. And I think what would make our country and our state even better is if more people threw their hat in the ring. You know, I plan on doing this for a time frame, and I don't plan on being a career politician. And I think that other people may have a different path, and there's not one better than the other. But if more people threw their hat in the ring and participated in this process, I think it would make our state stronger.
I agree. The more talent, the bigger the talent pool is, you know, the better we're going to be. But for me also, I'm usually ground level, getting my hands dirty. So to learn how do I move that into legislation, like Jillian said, it's a whole process, and who do you have to talk to, and learning all that has been an eye-opener for me also. And what's important to you? If you had to choose, you know, I don't know whether it's one or three things, because I have people that write me and say, this has to be your main focus. And right. I know we each have things, there's some things that we all agree on and work together with, and we'll talk about it. But if you had to say three things that it's all important, that's what I tell people. It's all important. But what three things?
I'll jump in. I feel like everyone knows what's important to me, because I hammer this, you know, home all the time. But in order for us to pay for all the things that we're passionate about, we have to have a strong economy. I mean, nothing happens without people working and tax revenue coming into our coffers, and our budget growing, and our rainy day fund growing, and all of that. And we do that through a healthy economy. I don't care what party you're in, what caucus you're in. The ultimate goal for all of us is to make sure our economy is working in a way that pays for all the services that, you know, the services part is what we battle over all the time. And we all have these great ideas of how to expand that. It's never about reducing it. And that's not a bad thing. We can always expand, we can always do better. But to do that, we have to have money coming into our state. We have to have growth and good quality jobs, not minimum wage jobs, good quality jobs, jobs with benefits. And that's what I'm always about. And I know that's kind of easy to say, but you know, that's what I work on. I'm on the finance committee with Jill. I'm on the commerce committee. And those are the things that I stay focused on. We can all pick different committees and passions that we work on. And, you know, for me, it is all about the economy.
But then we got to worry about how we're going to pay for it.
Right.
You know, right. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll jump in. So I got into the work because of my passion for women's issues and really women's health, safety, equity. But the priority area has been preventing violence, so sexual violence, domestic violence, and gun violence. And then my second is the budget. So I agree with what Carrie has to say. I come from the angle, I'm on the appropriations committee. I wanted to be on that committee because I want that process to be more accessible and not so hidden. And I think we still have work to do, but it was a learning process, and I'm really happy to be able to be part of that process and to push for the budget process to be done a little bit differently, a lot differently. And then my final you know, thing that's really important to me is I see the role as an advocate for the people of West Hartford. And so my background's in public policy. And so I love getting emails from folks who are concerned about something or frustrated by something and being able to work with them to translate that into public policy.
Right, great, thank you. And Jill?
Sure. So I agree with what Carrie said about the environment, I'm sorry, the economy. This pandemic really kind of brings things to light and shows what happens when businesses aren't operating. So I've definitely want to help the small businesses. And then the other thing that I've been working on, and that's really come to light during this pandemic, is education and equity. And though we always knew that there was an achievement gap during this time, some school districts were really prepared, while others are still struggling to get their distance learning up and running. And, you know, it really, I've been working on that. I've been working with education reform groups and just trying to figure out how to kind of bridge that inequity. And I'm very fortunate that Glastonbury was one of the ones that was prepared. And I want to take that and help the other districts and make sure that all kids are getting an equitable education.
Right, which is
So
really
important.
important. It's all feeding into that. And Jillian, you've been working on equity for special needs.
Yeah, I've been having a group on Mondays with various advocates and parents to discuss this same issue, that there's this inequity amongst districts, in particular with students with special needs. And to Jill's point, there's so many students who have yet to even sign on or can't sign on because distance learning, we haven't figured out yet how to do that best for certain kids with special needs. So as we continue, I mean, I think we're all hoping that the fall will go back to normal, but I think we know it won't. And so we need to move it along so that these kids don't fall even farther behind.
Mm-hmm.
Virtual learning is not for every child. That's one of the issues. Also, I know I'm a person, even in talking, I like to see the person I'm talking to That's why I meet with constituents instead of over the phone if I can. And there's tons of students that are having that challenge also.
Mhm.
And I feel for the parents that work full-time jobs, you know, you're working a
Right.
full-time job. Teachers, you know, they teach other children, what is it, 4 hours a day, 5 hours, and working on that. And then they have their own children, etc. So it's pretty tough out there right now for our constituents. And as we go on, I think it's going to get more. And I agree. I think that's one of my most important issues that I like to do is taking care of the people in my district. You know, sometimes you get a call on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, but how do you refuse talking to someone that can't pay their mortgage? Their check hasn't come in through the DOL and happening, people being laid off, as we know in the group that we belong to, a couple of people, just either their husbands or themselves, their hours have been cut. So it's helping them through getting to the right places to talk. What can you say about the issues we're having now with the police and racism? And there's just a lot of talk all over, rallies. I know personally, I live in my little bubble in Windsor. We're pretty diverse, and you think everything is more or less okay. And it wasn't until some years ago that a good friend, I saw a post on Facebook, and he was talking about how when his wife was pregnant, they were both hoping that it was a girl and not a boy. Not that they wouldn't love a boy, but it brings all different challenges. And I didn't understand it. I was like, what is he talking about? So I called him. And I think that was my first real wake up to what was happening to, you know, people I knew. And you just didn't see, it wasn't talked about a lot. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I learned a few years ago the importance of having a police force that is representative of the population they serve. Mm-hmm. And I think in the very least, if we go into special session, it should be something that we can do as a state, you know, some sort of policy. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm open to, you know, discussions. For example, I live in a community that has a population that's 20% Indian, and none of the you know, police in the town of Rocky Hill are of Indian descent. So I think that it would be appropriate to have someone, you know, of Indian descent on the police force, because there may be a cultural gap or some difference that, you know, when attending to, you know, an accident or anything that happens in town, you can, you know, relate, you can educate other officers on things like that. So, my husband worked in the city of Bridgeport, and under the former mayor, they instituted a policy that, you know, that had to, you know, take place. Any of the new recruits had to be, you know, under the, you know, diversity of the city. And I thought that was really interesting, but it was happening just a few years ago. I mean, and it was only happening in Bridgeport. I don't know if Hartford or New Haven or New London or Glastonbury, West Hartford have those same policies, but I hope that we move into that, you know, direction, because there are cultural differences that we all need to be sensitive to. And I think that's a start. There's a lot of other things to do, but you know, for me, I feel like that's something we can talk about and change on now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I used to teach Spanish to the Windsor Police Department years and years ago. And we'd also talk culturally. When you come from different cultures, if you're from Mexico and not here a long time and you get stopped by a police officer, the first thing you're going to do is offer them a bribe. Because culturally, that's what they do in Mexico. You offer a bribe. So it has to be taken in a little bit of different context and understanding. It doesn't mean that they get off, but you can understand a little bit where they're coming from, because each culture is different.
Yeah, and maybe an officer who was, you know, presented with a bribe would try to discipline that person, you know, versus try to understand like where they're coming from. So how important is it to just, you know, talk about the Mexican culture?
Educate them there.
Yeah.
To educate the, you know, here in the United States, we don't take bribes. Well, hopefully. And to try to educate of, you know, living here so that they don't have a reoccurrence of that and maybe have a bad situation.
I think, you know, the racism is just so deeply ingrained in our culture and our institutions, and we were all raised in a society where we learned different things, and to unpack all that is really challenging. So I think education also is a key component, and I'd love to see more anti-racism education across the police force, across all of society. But to the point you're all making, I think it takes a long time to unpack these things, and a lot of that implicit bias, people don't even recognize what they're doing. And so I think something we can do as policymakers is to try to get that education out there. I have a similar story to yours, Jane, where it was Michael Brown, which is really kind of what made me finally wake up, because when he was shot down in the street, I knew immediately my son would never be shot down in a West Hartford street. Like, that's not ever going to happen. And so that was really this turning point of what is going on. And I've done a lot of work and a lot of training, but I could continue doing it. And so that's why I know, like, we really have to help people to see something that's really unseen because we were raised in it.
Right. And many people don't want to talk about it still. So it's hard getting that conversation going, but it's so important. Jill?
And I just want to say, I think that what I was saying earlier is that education inequity. I mean, I think, you know, every community deserves to feel a worthy part of their community. And that starts in school. That's the first place that you can have worth. And that, I mean, those kinds of things need to be fixed. Housing and job availability. I mean, these are the things that we have to work for in our communities. And yeah.
Right. And we did pass the bill last session for African American Studies.
Yes.
From Bobby Gibson. And
minority teacher recruitment, which is huge. And that it's great on paper, but it's just getting the people,
everybody to do it.
To everyone to do it, and to get people of the minorities to want to be teachers. Right now, the problem is there's a shortage of minorities that want to be teachers. So it's trying to bridge that gap. We're putting legislation out there, trying to help the cause, but just the legislation itself won't do it. We need to really work, and you have to start at a younger age to get them interested. And the way to get them interested is to have teachers that look like them and that inspire them. And, you know, it's tough.
Right. And I think that through this COVID, the minority population has been crucial to our front line. There are home care workers, they're in our nursing homes, they're putting their lives at risk. A lot of the poorly paid jobs, you know, and they're the ones that kept a lot of restaurants open and different, and need to be appreciated for that. How do we keep the conversation going? Because I've been reading a lot up on our history and going back over the years. We've had these moments in our history, but then it seems like we do a few things and then we kind of forget about it again, and it hasn't been excised. So it simmers below again until something happens again. So how do we keep this momentum going to, you know, long term to really fix this issue? Does anyone have any ideas?
Well, I think that just, you know, I think we have the largest freshman class of women in the history of the legislature. So if we're going to do this and keep it going, we have a group, I think, that is able to do that and willing and able to do it. Again, just echoing everyone's sentiments. I mean, our freshman class is awesome. I mean, I love working with everyone, and I can't believe the talent pool that we have. So this is a start to keep it going. I think this knee-jerk governing needs to stop. You know, let's, you know, work on these systemic issues that always keep coming up throughout the history, and make some change now. I'm willing to do that. I know that everyone on this call is willing to do that. And again, education is so key here. And how we continue this dialogue all the time is really up to us. And I know that we have a group that's willing to do it. And the next group that comes in, will make even bigger strides. So we just have to be, committed to keep moving this forward.
Right, I agree.
Couldn't have said it better. Yeah, agreed.
Right. Well, I want to thank all three of you for coming on the porch. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see you. I hope we go into special session, not only so that we can get some work done, but get to see you all. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And thank you to Win TV, Jenny and Howard, and for all of you tuning in. Hope to see you next week with another exciting and informative On the Porch.